Join me today as we unbox our order from Color Blends. Hey everybody, welcome back to Horticulture Geek. Thank you so much for joining me today here on the channel. I'm Ray, and today we are going to unbox our order from Color Blends, and hopefully we're going to get all these bulbs into the ground. So I thought I'd bring you guys along with me for this process. Now, I just did a bulb planting video last week where I put some bulbs here in the backyard and in some containers, and I walked you through that process. These are going in the front yard. This is my big order for the front yard. So I have a big bulb crate and then the box. So we're gonna open these up. I'm gonna walk you through the varieties that I have, and then we're gonna go and look at where these are going. So let's jump right into this unboxing. All right, so here in the first big crate, I have, some hyacinth bulbs. I ordered some hyacinth bulbs. So there are 25 of these, and this is just a multicolored hyacinth blend. And then here comes our tulips. So this is shocks and struts. There are 100 of this blend here. I have 100 blushing lady. And I have 100 gentle giants. And this is a pinky peach apricot. The blushing lady is a yellow with rose. It's one of my favorites. I plant it every year. And then the shocks and struts is just a shade of pink. All right, so there's this box. Let's go to the little box. All right, here we have 100 more of the shocks and struts. A 100 sherbet, and sherbet is a violet and salmon pink. And then 100 more of the sherbet. So, what I'm gonna do now, let's just do a close-up of the tags for you guys so you can see all the specs on these. So there you go, is sherbet. So sherbet, like I said, is a violet salmon pink. It's a late bloomer, and it's a 20 to 24 inch flower. So that's sherbet. Okay, here's blushing lady. Get that up there where you can see that. So blushing lady is a yellow with rose. It is a mid to late bloomer on a 26 to 30 inch flower head. Okay. Shocks and struts. Ooh, get that in the picture there. So that is shades of pink. It's an early to mid on a 16 to 18 inch. And then my gentle giants. Gentle giant is, there you go, a pink peach and apricot, a mid-season bloomer on a 24 to 26 inch flower stalk. Okay, so here's what we're going to do with these bulbs. The hyacinth bulbs are for a different planting project. All of these tulip bulbs are going into the front yard. So I have 200 shocks and struts, and I have 200 sherbets, okay? I have, if you've been with me for a while, I plant my tulips in the same spot out front. There are 4 different spots in the front flower beds where I plant these tulips. So I'm going to be putting 50 shocks and struts in each of those areas, 50 sherbets in each of those areas, and then 25 gentle giants and 25 blushing ladies. And what that is going to do for me is it's going to give me all in shades of pinky peach. It's going to give me a longer bloom time. I've got some early to mid bloomers and some late bloomers. So as varieties start coming up and blooming, other varieties will be coming in behind. You know, a general rule of thumb with a tulip is it should give you about a 2-week bloom. A tulip bulb should come up and give you roughly 2 weeks-ish, for me anyway. So by doing these blends and then by mixing and matching compatible blends in my flower beds, I should get a 4 to 6 week tulip bloom in my front yard. Now, all 600 of these tulips will not bloom at the same time, but I should have a continual bloom show in my flower beds for 4 to 6 weeks. So that is tip number 1 when you are buying tulip bulbs. Well, tip number 1 really is get your bulbs from a reliable vendor. Color Blends is wonderful. Some other bulb companies don't take the time to make sure their bulbs are good. And some companies don't care about pre-chill periods, and that's all up to you, and they're not going to tell you any of that. So working with a reputable company is tip number 1. But tip number 2 is don't pigeonhole yourself into one variety of tulip. Because yes, 600 tulips blooming all at the same time would be beautiful, but those 600 tulips are going to be dead and gone in a week and a half to 2 weeks. And then what are you going to do? So by doing this method, and if I mix and match different seasonal bloomers, so my early to mids, my mids, and my mid to lates, or my lates, I can mix those together, all together in my same flower beds, and have a continual show throughout a bulk of that spring season. So that's tip number 2, is really look at your varieties and when that variety blooms and mix and match from there. And then tip number 3, which we've discussed in previous videos, is put your bulbs in appropriately, make sure they're pointed the right direction, and make sure you're giving them food so that they can grow. Now, a bulb has everything it needs to produce a flower for this year, right? So the farmer last year did his due diligence to grow these bulbs, and now this bulb is ready to go. But I still, as a good gardener, want to make sure that I'm giving this plant some additional food and resources just to ensure its success this year. So there you go. So now what we're gonna do is we are going to get these bulbs hauled out to the front yard, and I'm gonna get set up out there, and we can look at where they're going, and then I've got to start digging. I am doing the pit or trench method, so I've got to dig out my pits, my trenches, and get my amendments in there and start planting bulbs. So let me go work on all that, and you'll be right back in just a second when we're ready to go on to the next step. Okay, so we're out here in the front yard. It is a busy street, it's hard to hear, and I've got my son on the lawnmower. He's helping me get all the leaves up. I had to clean the flower beds out, rake the leaves out, that kind of stuff before I could plant. So he's finishing up with leaf removal right now. But I wanted to show you, this is where we are working, right here in the front of the house. So I've got my flower bed here on this corner. I've got the flower bed at that side of the front door, the flower bed at the other side of the front door, and then the flower bed on the other corner of the house. So you can see that better. I have a tarp laid out. This is just a very inexpensive, cheap tarp from any hardware store. It's a small one. As I shovel the dirt out of my pit, I'm going to put it on the tarp. That will prevent my grass and my yard from getting all muddy and messy, and it will let me contain that dirt so that I can then pour it right back into my pit once my bulbs are in place. I've got compost out here, I've got my bulbs out here, I've got biotone starter fertilizer out here, and I have my bulb food out here. So now all that is left to do is to dig a pit. I'm not gonna film that, but once the pit is dug, I will bring the camera back and we will look at how that looks. Here we go. All right, so I have my trench dug at this point. It's a 6 to 8 inch deep trench that just swoops around the front of this flower bed. As you can see, I've got all my soil here on the tarp, as I said, and now I'm going to start amending my soil. So I'm going to be putting in some compost, and I'm going to do 1 bag for each of my planting trenches. All right, next up, biotone for good root development. All right, it's not going to take a lot of the biotone. Now then, I'm just going to give that a quick little mix, just a gentle mix in the trench to get that incorporated. Perfect. And now I'm going to put in a layer of my bulb food. So I'm just going to give this a sprinkling, a gentle coating right on top. Perfect. All right, so now that I have this done, I simply have to place all my bulbs into the trench. If you remember, I've got 25 of the blushing ladies and 25 of a different variety, and then 50 of the 2 other varieties. So with my smaller number of varieties, I'm going to place those first so that I can ensure even coverage along the trench, and then I'll fill in with my bulk varieties. So I'm not going to show that process. It's the same as planting any other bulb, but I will show you when I have them all placed out. So here we go. All right, I have the bulbs in the trench. They're all oriented up, they're placed around, they're evenly spaced out. All my amendments and fertilizers are in the ground. So now it's just a matter of covering them back up. And then this side is done and I can move on to the other 3 sections. Here we go. All right, see, my shadow's in the way, but here is pit number 2 at the front door. All the bulbs are placed, fertilizer and compost is in. Bulbs are pointed upright, and we are ready to fill the hole. Okay, so I have all 4 sections planted. I didn't really get photos or videos of some of it because it's all the same information. But I will take a quick tour through the area for you just so you can see kind of where everything landed and get the lay of the land. So let me flip the camera around and we'll do that right now. Okay, so here's our first corner. This is the one you saw me really get in there and do, where I explained everything. And then I did a big triangular shaped patch there, a big triangular shaped patch there, and then a swoop down this corner of the house as well. So that is 600 tulip bulbs in the ground, ready to go for spring. Now remember, if you're up north watching this video, if you haven't watched any of my other videos, I am in Arkansas, Central Arkansas, zone 7B, 8A. So right now, the week of Christmas, this is actually the day after Christmas today. This is a perfect time for us here in the warm south to plant our tulip bulbs. We have to pre-chill our tulip bulbs for success. Our winters just don't get cold enough for long enough to really sustain a tulip to let it do what it needs to do. So we have to pre-chill our bulbs for 6 weeks. So again, I went with a reputable company. I went with Color Blends. They pre-chilled my bulbs for me. They shipped them to me last week. And today, the day after Christmas, I'm getting them in the ground, and now they are all tucked in and ready to go for spring. If you are up north, it is probably too late for you to do this. But if your ground is not frozen solid, if it is workable, then you could find some bulbs, then you probably can go ahead and do this. If you're some of my southern gardener friends, you've still got time. If you can get your hands on bulbs, get them in the ground. And you saw the steps I took. Now, again, this was the trench method, because when I'm doing that many bulbs, to do an auger hole or an individually dig 600 holes would take forever. So it was just easier to dig my trenches, and then I could ensure an even coverage of compost and even coverage of my biotone and my bulb fertilizer. So now my bulbs are tucked in and ready to go. And so that's what I would recommend to you guys as well if you are going to plant a large number of tulip bulbs, or any bulbs really, daffodil bulbs, hyacinth bulbs, whatever. Make sure you give them the good stuff so that they can thrive and give you that bloom that you have paid money for. All right, so that is my tip for you. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video today. Thanks for hanging out with me here on the Horticulture Geek channel. I certainly do appreciate you watching today's video. If you've enjoyed it, give me that thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments, leave those down below and I'll do my best to answer every single one. But until next time, from my garden to yours, I wish you all the best and happy gardening.